Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending upon the location you are watching this webinar. Welcome to yet another interesting webinar organized by batteryline.com. And today's topic is exploring battery passports for emerging battery manufacturers. Our webinar aims to shed light on the concept of battery passport and its significance in battery manufacturing industry. Today, we are joined by expert Ms. Pavlina, who is project lead for battery materials at MindSpider. Pavlina, we request you to share more about yourself and MindSpider to our audience.
Thank you, Vikram. Thank you for the invite, and it's a pleasure to join you in this interesting discussion. As you said, I'm a part of the MindSpider team who works on the implementation of battery passports. So MindSpider is a blockchain-based traceability company who is working on across different supply chain for implementation of traceability and product and battery passports across different industries. I'm part of the team that is working specifically on the battery passport regulation and the implementation of battery passports across our client base and different projects. So it's a pleasure to be with you today and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Pavlina, for the introduction. And without taking much time, let's begin with the Q&A session. So, what is battery passport, and are there upcoming regulations or policies that might impact the implementation of battery passports?
So, in general, the battery passport is defined as an electronic record which should hold all the data regarding the battery, including its technical details, information requirements, sustainability, and usage data. So, it was initially proposed as part of the EU battery regulation proposal back in the 2020, and it was officialized this July when the regulation was approved, and it finally entered in force on the 17th of August this year. So, in short, the end output of a battery passport is a QR code which should be attached to the physical battery. And it's important to note that the battery passport is only applicable to three types of categories of batteries. The industrial batteries with capacity above 2 kilowatts per hour, electric vehicle batteries, and LMT or light means of transport vehicle batteries. So in terms of the timeline, it is expected to come actually from February 2027. And overall, it will contain information about the whole life cycle of a battery, including the critical minerals, sustainability information, carbon footprint information, and more on the technical side and usage data of the battery itself.
Yeah, thanks for explaining about battery passports and about the regulations in short related to battery passports. So coming to the next question, where the battery passport can be implemented, is it on the cell level or on the raw materials, or is it on the battery module or on the pack level?
So in general, the obligation for battery passports lies in whoever is in the space of economic operators. So now what this means according to the regulation is that any company, whether it's a battery manufacturer, an OEM, an importer or distributor who is placing the actual battery on the EU market for the first time or putting it in service will have the obligation to create this battery passport. So in that sense, any of these type of entities having been placed the battery for the first time or putting it in service will have to create the battery passport for that specific battery itself.
Okay, I have a small question here. You mean the battery passports are first implemented by the cell manufacturers, and then the pack manufacturers make use of these cells with the battery passport, and the pack manufacturers will use it or will have its own battery passport?
So the initial implementation point is on a battery pack level, on the whole battery as a whole. So in that sense, the economic operator, whoever is placing that battery pack, will have the obligation to create the battery passport. When it comes to cell manufacturers or model manufacturers, depending on the model that companies will use, they will need to provide certain set of data so that whoever issues the battery passport will need to have all the required details. But when it comes to whether the cell producer should create the battery passport, the short answer is this lies on the battery pack or the battery as a whole. So in that sense, they will only have the obligation to give the data to either their module clients or module to pack, depending on the mode.
Okay. Can you tell us more about what type of data is stored over there?
Sure. The way how the battery passport is structured is basically it will hold two types of information. The first set is actually information that pertains to the battery model itself. And in this group, we have the standard battery information requirements, meaning who has produced the battery, where it's the location, what would be the chemistry details in it, and so on. Then there should be the sustainability, labeling, and composition details, which should go in this part. And the second part is also called a dynamic set of data, or the individual battery usage data. This is actually the part which is very interesting and important, because it will contain data which comes directly from the BMS, and actually should state the state of health and state of charge data of the battery itself. Now, the important thing to note is that each of these different parts or subparts, in whether it's a battery model or individual battery usage data, come with different data sharing layers prescribed by the regulation, meaning that not all of the data will be public, but it's categorized as either public or private. So in the battery passport, we will have these two sets of information available to different parties.
Yeah, thanks, Pavlina, for explaining about what type of data is actually stored in battery passports. Coming to the next question. So how does battery passport add value to the battery manufacturing line?
So the crucial thing when this regulation was proposed, and then when it was enforced, is that it will bring transparency across the battery value chain. What this means is that once there is an establishment of a digital record of the actual physical battery, this should contain information about not only the technical nature of the battery, but also its sustainability and life cycle requirements. And then based on that, what would mean is that for the battery manufacturers, where they are in the process of creating the batteries, they would need to report this information. But over time, they would be able to build a comprehensive set of benchmarks where they would be able to compare their suppliers in terms of the data, information, and quality of materials they are receiving from them. So the ultimate goal of the battery passport is actually to provide end users with enough information so that there can be more informed decision making based on the status of the battery. So instead of having batteries ending up directly for recycling, we can have, with this extra information, maybe one extra step in between this, where the battery is being reused or repurposed for something else. So by providing a standardized and comparable auditable data source, every user or every player in the battery value chain would be able to get bigger input, more data, and that way decide how to better treat the battery even after its end of life.
Okay. Thanks for explaining about importance of battery passports in manufacturing line and how it helps in transparency in the process. So coming to the next question, what are the challenges while implementing of battery passports?
So yeah, it's a very complex regulation. It's also a quite extensive one. So when it comes to the battery passports, there are still several challenges, let's say, for manufacturers, suppliers, and economic operators in general. And we can name a few categories. First of all, I can say standardization. So even though the regulation prescribes a different set of rules and formats, still there are some pending acts and methodologies that are still yet to come out. So having this standardized format and framework for the battery passports and the different data sets that come into them would make the different battery passports basically compatible across different types and categories. So it is very important to establish a common set of requirements and guidelines that can be applied to all the different types of categories of batteries, so that over time we can have a comparable basis and draw conclusions based on it. Maybe the second challenge that I can point out is the process of data collection and management. Gathering and managing the necessary data for the battery passports will also require companies to interact with their wider supplier base, but also be integrated with their internal legacy systems. So the passport will contain information which, as we said, can be either static or dynamic, and actually spans across the entire life cycle of a battery. So having these aspects, such as integration with internal systems or with systems from suppliers, let's say in a way sorted out, would significantly benefit and actually complement the point that I mentioned previously on standardization. Some other parts or points that can be mentioned are actually the compliance and the regulatory parts. There are a lot of timelines which differ. For example, we have the carbon footprint calculation starting at the very first point since 2025. Then we have the due diligence obligations. This set of requirements with their clear timelines and formats will also help companies to start better planning their processes internally, and of course different supply chain integrations and how all these different platforms and networks who will be using or creating battery passport can collaborate with each other is another aspect and challenge that companies are very keen to hear on. But I would say the most interesting aspect, probably important for now, since the regulation is in force, is the education and awareness building among the different battery participants, not only just the battery manufacturers or OEMs, because in order for this to function, we need a collaborative approach amongst the different parties. So for a battery manufacturer or an OEM to create a battery passport, they would need to know or declare the critical minerals in the battery. And for that, they would need to know their upstream suppliers. So building this awareness of the regulation, of the requirements as a first point, I would say is also very important, along with the other types such as standardization and data collection and management.
Yeah, thanks for explaining about the challenges while implementing battery passports in a very detailed manner. Coming to the next question, how can battery passports as a solution can assist in second life applications or even in battery recycling processes or even after the recycling process?
This is actually a very great question. In that sense, when we are speaking about the end of life flows of a battery, I see personally the value of the battery passport as immense. This comes with the part that is actually tied with the dynamic data, meaning the BMS information that should be part of the battery passport itself. As a tool which would have all these details, having this let's say dynamic set of data about the state of health of a battery just at a scan of a QR code in your hand can create a lot of difference for when a battery reaches its end of life. So just to give one example, if we take one EV battery as an example, once it reaches 60 or 70% of its capacity, usually we can say that it's not in its perfect mode for functioning as part of the electric vehicle. In that case, if there is enough information on the state of health, on the chemistry details, this battery can be more efficiently treated, and instead of ending up in a landfill, it can go for second life, or it can be reused or repurposed based on the available information. So in a situation when we will have a battery passport and a QR code of each of these batteries, depending on who gets to see the information, once we have a more detailed look in the state of health, we can better decide how to more efficiently treat that battery, which would fit in the whole circular economy concept of reusing the materials coming from batteries.
So we know that MindSpider is also having expertise in blockchain. So can you please enlighten us on that topic and how does it link with battery passport?
Of course. So MindSpider started as a blockchain-based platform specifically for supply chain traceability of raw materials. But over time, as the different regulations and needs of companies started emerging, we expanded the scope not only to raw materials, but now we can track and trace every type of product or different type of material, no matter whether it's metal or not non-metal, including batteries as well. What we have done is actually one of our very first projects was the lead traceability in lead zinc batteries. And we have used our blockchain-based platform to complete this project.
Sorry, Pavlina, for this interruption. So, can you please explain to our audience what do we mean by blockchain?
Sure, of course. So blockchain is a type of distributed ledger technology that provides for secure record keeping. And due to its decentralized nature, unlike classical centralized networks, here the records have a timestamp and unique identifier. So in our case, we run a public permission blockchain, which is specifically designed for supply chain traceability. So what this means is when you add data about your product, that data is tamper-proof, meaning that it gets a timestamped record and a hash. So there is no chance that someone can manipulate that data. And this is one of the features and benefits of the blockchain technology itself. So yeah, I hope that gives you a bit of a better perspective on this.
Yes, absolutely. So coming to the next question, how can consumer benefit from the battery passports in terms of ensuring quality, safety, and longevity of their EVs?
So yeah, this ties in with what we discussed just previously for end of life as well. So they can benefit customers and end users in many ways. First of all, you get more information on your hand. If you're an end user or let's say an EV vehicle owner, that battery passport should log in the information about every repair, every maintenance of the battery, what parts were switched, and so on. So it should contain the full history of how the battery is treated, not just while it was created, but also during its usage phase. Some of the benefits obviously are the increased transparency. We would also expect to have improved recycling rates, and of course, for companies placing batteries on the market, greater confidence and strengthening of their brand reputation. Just as an example, the battery passport will have these two layers of public and private data. Access to these layers can give better informed decision making, not only for the end user, but also for the recyclers and let's say the EU Commission authorities who would like to get a deeper look into the batteries which are being placed on their markets. In the specific example of an EV battery, as I said, logging on every repair detail or maintenance can also over time bring benchmarks and better reporting systems in terms of where malfunctions can happen, with which parts, and in which intervals, so that manufacturers over time can even improve their processes even more.
Thanks, Pavlina, for explaining the benefits and for the end users especially. So coming to the last question of this webinar, can you mention the case study of MindSpider where it implemented battery passport solutions, and what were the objectives and how it provided the solution?
Of course. So besides our work with clients on the battery passport implementation process, we are part of two major projects which are funded by the European Union. The first one is called BETRO, and actually the purpose of the project is to explore new ways of recycling materials, specifically from electric vehicle batteries. In this project, MindSpider is working alongside 17 other companies as part of a consortium, and we are the technological provider for the battery passport and the material traceability platform. And the second one, which actually started this year, it's called Recirculate, and it's a consortium of 11 companies. And our aim here is basically to work on improving end-of-life flows of batteries with the focus on repair and reuse, as well as build an MVP of a battery marketplace by using our tracking technology and battery passports.
So, Pavlina, we have come to an end of this webinar. So thank you once again, Pavlina, for joining us today and enlighten us about battery passport and also about MindSpider. Would you like to share anything with our audience today?
I would like to encourage companies to start looking at the regulation, especially now since it's officially in force, to start looking at the details, the timelines that it offers, and actually start better planning. We always say companies always think there is enough time, but this is a very comprehensive piece of regulation which comes with a lot of requirements. So starting earlier and planning on these aspects can be very beneficial. For companies who may have already analyzed these details, we have also launched our open battery passport in May this year. So if someone wants to explore how this looks like, we're open to connect. So all the details are on our open battery passport website. So in general, that would be my recommendation. Start looking into the regulation details and learn more about your supply chains and your supplier networks.
Thank you again, Pavlina. So to our audience watching this webinar today, so if you have more questions regarding battery passport or you want to know more about our partner MindSpider, you can write to us at info@batteryline.com. We request to follow batteryline.com's LinkedIn page for getting more insights about our experts community and information about upcoming webinars. Thank you and see you soon.
Thank you.